The big man in Tennessee is at it. The 49ers were interested in adding Jermaine Johnson ahead of the trade deadline this past season when Robert Saleh was their defensive coordinator. Now Saleh is the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and it really seems to me that he might have negotiated some personnel control into his role with Tennessee, which is smart on Saleh's part because finally he's able to acquire Jermaine Johnson. The rare but increasingly common player-for-player trade has been executed between the Titans and the New York Jets, Robert Saleh's former team. And that is not coincidental here because Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher, played under Robert Saleh when he was the head coach in New York. Now, what makes this fascinating to me is that I think that if you just had to say who's the better player between these two guys, T'Vondre Sweat or Jermaine Johnson, I would lean toward T'Vondre Sweat. I mean, this is a premier defensive tackle, and he still has 2 years of team control on his rookie deal, so at a very cost-controlled price now for the Jets instead of the Titans. But it was a matter of scheme fit. T'Vondre at right, he's a 366-pound, 3'4" nose tackle. And as we know, Robert Saleh wants to run a four-man front. He loves his edge rushers. 49ers wanted to trade a third-round pick for Jermaine Johnson at the deadline. The Jets wanted a second-round pick. The reason that the 49ers were so interested at the deadline is because Jermaine Johnson wasn't only under contract for 2025, but also for this 2026 season. However, he's going to come at a cost of about $13 million because he's a former first-round pick playing on his fifth-year option season. So Robert Saleh and the Titans feel that due to scheme fit, Jermaine Johnson's going to fit like a glove into that 4-3 defense. It is worth acquiring a more expensive player with only 1 year of team control at a more premium position. I'll give Robert Saleh and the Titans that. Edge rusher is considered a more premium position in exchange for giving up maybe a better player on paper, but at a less valuable position, especially to the Titans, since they're now going to be running a 4-3 and T'Vondre Sweat is a 3-4 nose tackle. And obviously they're giving up the 2 years of team control. The reason why player-for-player trades typically don't work in the NFL is because of the term length of the contracts. You're not just trading the player, you're trading the contract. So it is thought, and the Jets agree with this right now, that the T'Vondre Swift deal, that the T'Vondre Sweat deal is more valuable than the Jermaine Johnson deal, just because he's got 2 years of a very cheap rookie price left, and Jermaine Johnson has one not all that inexpensive year remaining on his contract. But for scheme fit, Robert Saleh willing to make the move. The Titans have been busy making moves here over the past couple days. I actually saw Robert in the hallway yesterday, very briefly, in Indianapolis, and he was rushing from spot to spot with a lot of the Tennessee Titans people. They were about to cut Lloyd Cushenberry, their starting center, and their starting safety, Xavier Woods. And Cushenberry, the Titans had just paid a lot of money a few years ago. So I really think, and Mike brought this up to me yesterday when we were texting, that Robert Saleh must have some personnel control. And I think that this right now verifies it. Robert Saleh trading for Jermaine Johnson. Now, automatically, I start to think forward for the 49ers, who now have Raheem Morris as their defensive coordinator. Are the 49ers going to make moves tailored for Morris? And if they do, what would those moves be? Maybe not specifically, but in general, what are they going to be looking for? And I think that the defensive line is something that John Lynch very clearly answered the other day when he spoke in Indianapolis. Those of you who want the full video of John Lynch, you can raise your hands. I'm going to go ahead and post that at some point today. I know that I hadn't done that because it was such a busy day when he did speak for the 49ers on Tuesday, and it was already later in the day. It was unusual because John Lynch has got a bunch of competition committee stuff. So we haven't gotten around to posting that, but I think that's going to go up at some point later today. So be ready for it. You can watch all 21 minutes of John Lynch in front of the cameras at the NFL Combine. But when he answered the question about what position in specific, the 49ers are going to want to address this offseason, and obviously they're going to try to address all of them. It's not that great of a question, but it was interesting to me that Robert Saleh did immediately hop on defensive line. And I think about Raheem Morris the same way that I think about Robert Saleh. Like Saleh, I know he wants a 4 down front, and he's going to want his edge rushers. He wanted the 49ers to trade for Jermaine Johnson, but the Jets just wanted a little too much. They wanted a second-round pick, and the 49ers were only willing to offer a third. Unlike somebody like Jalen Phillips, who went for a third-round pick to Philadelphia, the 49ers wanted a player who was still under team control in 2026. Jalen Phillips now is a pending free agent. So you could see where their headspace was at entering that trade deadline. You could see why they didn't execute the move, but you could see why they wanted to do it. And it was because it fit what Robert Saleh was looking for. So now you transition to, well, what is Raheem Morris looking for? And I think that in many of the same ways, he's looking for defensive linemen, but the 49ers are probably going to be open to a different type of defensive linemen as far as expanding their search set. And John Lynch had a great quote the other day that I have in my article up on the San Francisco Standard. We're going to get this open for you right now. You can go ahead and take a look right there. I'm going to tell Mike to put this into the description so everybody can go check it out. But as far as what Raheem Morris is looking for, the 4-3, the 3-4, 5-man fronts, have a look at this. Let's make this much bigger on the screen. John Lynch on Morris. He's got a lot of variety to the type of defense schematically in terms of what he's deployed. He's familiar with the system we run, and what he did with the Rams from 2021 to 2023 can add a variety to what we do. We're a 4-man front team. Okay, that's going to stay the same at its base from when Robert Saleh was around. But we dabbled in a lot of 5-man fronts last year. And by a lot, the 49ers, I went back and checked. Mike looked it up for us. They ran a 5-man front 50 times last year on 7.8% of snaps. So we can quibble here with John Lynch about what a lot means. I don't think that 7.8% of snaps is a lot, but 50 times they lined up in a 5-man front. It's obviously going to increase this season. Raheem's done a lot more of that, of those 5-man fronts, because he's done some 3-4 stuff, because 5-man fronts are generally born of 3-4 alignments with a couple of big outside linebackers. So there'll be some different body types and things, but just small tweaks. The positive thing for me is that it widens the sample size of prospective players. The guy wasn't there because we thought he was more of a 3-4 outside backer. Maybe there's a spot for him now. Great quote from John Lynch. And I think that ties obviously directly into the 49ers change at defensive coordinator. You know, the 49ers, I think, were also careful in a way ahead of the trade deadline because they knew that Robert Saleh might leave. They probably had an idea that Raheem Morris could be their next guy if he got fired by the Atlanta Falcons, which is exactly what happened. So if there was a player who was specifically a Robert Saleh fit, and Jermaine Johnson obviously falls into that category. He's a speed edge rusher. He's a good player. I mean, he's been productive over his NFL career, and he thrived when Saleh was the coach of the Jets. But if there was a player who was specifically a Saleh fit, the 49ers wanted to make sure that they restrained their spending as far as draft capital went, so that it would not exceed a certain threshold that would definitely hurt them in the future if Saleh ever were to leave. And Jermaine Johnson, they were looking at him as somebody who could obviously fit in the system for 2026 as well. He was under contract then. But the fact that the Jets wanted a second-round pick ahead of the deadline, that was a little too aggressive. You take a look at the cost-benefit analysis, right? Jermaine Johnson would have been a rental for the period of 2025 following the trade deadline, and then he would have been a $13 million player needing an extension beyond 2026. The 49ers would have had to give up a second-round pick to the New York Jets, a second-round pick that they're going to use in the upcoming NFL draft. That pick is going to allow them to get you would hope if they use it correctly, a top 60 player in this NFL draft. And that top 60 player is going to be under contract for 4 seasons at a very affordable rate. So it's top 60 player, 4 seasons, affordable rate versus Jermaine Johnson, 1 season, $13 million, needing an extension. The 49ers obviously opted for youth, especially knowing that Robert Saleh might not be around forever, which ended up happening. He ended up going to the Tennessee Titans and then orchestrating this trade that we saw this morning. T'Vondre Sweat and Jermaine Johnson swapping teams, even though their contracts don't quite match. I'm excited to see what Saleh might be able to do with the Tennessee Titans. It looks, with the personnel control that he very obviously does have, starting to get some of his own guys in there. He's playing this in a win now sense. I mean, you're trading for a guy who's on the last year of his contract in Jermaine Johnson. I think there's urgency from Robert Saleh to turn this around quickly in Tennessee, be good quickly. He realizes he didn't have a very long leash during his last job with the New York Jets, so he's making sure that he can get his guys in there now. And if there's one thing that I'll say, Robert Saleh knows how to build a defense. The Jets were consistently a top 5 unit under Saleh. I mean, and he built them up from one of the worst in the league to top 5, 3 straight seasons of top 5. And then as soon as they fired Robert Saleh, they sunk down into the 20s. But I think that he was the glue holding that defense together. It's been the offensive side of the ball that has proven to be a struggle for Robert. And obviously that's going to make or break how far he can make it in Tennessee. But this move right here is Robert Saleh trying to build that Titans defense in his vision. When we talk about Raheem Morris and building the defense in his vision, one position that I haven't discussed all too much is safety. I really wonder what Raheem is going to push for the 49ers front office to do there. As we know, Ji'Ayir Brown started a bunch of games last season. That is a Steve Wilks draft pick. That he was picked back in the 2023 season when Steve was the defensive coordinator, and Steve obviously had a lot of input into that pick, got up on a table for the 49ers to draft Ji'Ayir Brown. He's a slower safety. We know that Robert Saleh preferred faster safeties. So we'll see what Raheem Morris wants at that position, but we do know that the 49ers did struggle there. They have a faster young guy in Maris Seagull. Could scroll down to that safety position right now, zoom in a little bit. The faster young guy, Maris Seagull, though, did not play the ball very effectively his rookie year. In fact, over the course of the first 5 weeks or so, he had given up the most yardage into his coverage of any safety in the NFL. That being said, I think that there are realistic hopes about Maris Seagull's continued development. And I think that the 49ers really love his physical skill set. Malik Mustafa, promising start, was really, really good. Maybe the highlight of the 49ers defense in 2024. But he tore his ACL in the very last game. And I think that did slow him down in 2025. He should be fully back in 2026 as far as explosiveness and trust in his body goes. And I would think that he could be a piece that the 49ers hope to build around at the safety position. But again, we've got to see what Raheem Morris is focused on for the 49ers as far as skill sets go at safety. I think that he was able to work with some really, really adaptable back ends with the Rams. I think of Jalen Ramsey playing the star position is what they called it. He was everywhere for the Rams. I do wonder if Upton Stout does a little bit of that along with Diamante Lenore for the 49ers. Those are two really, really versatile guys. Lenore obviously has a little bit more size. But, the delineation between these positions, and this happens a lot on the offensive side of the ball. I know we don't talk about it as much on the defensive side, but to counter the offensive adaptability that we're seeing around the NFL, the delineation between these positions is becoming smaller and smaller. A lot of teams want safeties who can flex down and match up one-on-one against wide receivers, especially in the slot. Because what happens when you're able to do that, say that Maris Seagull, this is one of the reasons that the 49ers really like Seagull coming out of Kansas State. They thought that his athleticism, and I think they still believe this, but he's got to develop better ball skills. They thought that his athleticism made him a good candidate to play man-on-man coverage against receivers, especially slot receivers, when he flexed down from a safety position. If you are able to do that with Maris Seagull, then Upton Stout doesn't necessarily have to cover on any given play, and Upton Stout can blitz. Guess who led the NFL? All cornerbacks. Guess who led all cornerbacks in pressures last year on the pass rush? Upton Stout. And the 49ers didn't blitz him all that much, but he was very effective when he was blitzing. And I think that is, one of Upton Stout's potential superpowers is coming after the quarterback. But you can only come after the quarterback, especially a good one who knows how to release the football against the blitz to find the open man downfield who's uncovered. You can only come after the quarterback if you've got a good plan on the back end. And I think that one of the ways that some of these pass defenses are starting to really confuse, especially the younger quarterbacks in this league, is their adaptability and the ability of safeties to match up and cover receivers one-on-one, and that allows the nickel back to come after the QB, and then you could go vice versa. Seagull could come after the QB, and Upton Stout can cover. As long as the opposing QB doesn't know exactly what you're going to be running at the line of scrimmage, you are potentially in a huge position of power as the defense. And I think that's why we've seen some of these pass defenses take major strides here in the last couple of years. And I think the 49ers need to follow suit with their adaptability on the back end. You need to keep pace. And I think that's something that Raheem Morris will be able to do for the 49ers. There's a reason that this hiring happened at this point in time for San Francisco. And it is because they have recognized the need to diversify not just the back end, but diversify what they're doing overall on defense. There was this funny discussion this offseason when Robert Saleh had left to be the Tennessee Titans head coach about the Seattle-style defense. The 49ers have not run the Seattle-style defense since 2018. And I guess that's a really broad descriptor, so I think we should probably define it. But whenever people had talked about the Seattle-style defense, I immediately thought four-man front, cover three, almost exclusively on the back end. Big press corners. So you thought about your Richard Sherman, your Brandon Browner back in the day for the Seahawks, and obviously an eraser single high safety. And that was Earl Thomas for the Seattle Seahawks. With a strong safety, that was Cam Chancellor, would come closer to the line of scrimmage. And if your strong safety was closer to the line of scrimmage, you'd have 8 men in the box, you'd take away the run, and then you'd rely on your big, strong corners and your eraser cover three safety to handle an extra load against the pass game. Part of the Seattle style success, a massive part of it, was the speed of their edge rushers. Cliff Averill, when that unit was in its prime in 2013, and also the block gobbling ability of the defensive tackle position. And for the Seattle Seahawks, it was Brandon Mebane and it was Michael Bennett on the inside. So the 49ers, when they ran the specific Seattle style system the first 2 years in 2017 and 2018, they had the defensive line personnel to be able to do it, especially with Armstead and his versatility, and DeForest Buckner and how he was able to crash from the inside. They had the tackles, right? They needed the edge rushers to complete it, and that's what they did in 2019 when they added Nick Bosa and they added Dee Ford. Now, another huge part of the Seattle style system was the linebacker flow. Bobby Wagner did it for the Seahawks. The 49ers were able to get first Quan Alexander, but then Fred Warner joined the team first, but Quan Alexander joined as a free agent. He was the tutor for Fred Warner to take his level to an all-pro level. By the time, though, that 2019 rolled around and the 49ers added the edge rushers, they also diversified their coverages. And they brought in Joe Woods, who interviewed to be their defensive coordinator this offseason, and he mixed in a ton of cover 4. So it wasn't just cover 3 for the 49ers anymore in 2019. The defense evolved significantly from what the Seattle-style prototype was. So it just made me kind of laugh when Robert Saleh left to the Tennessee Titans. And people were saying, oh, the 49ers, they want to stay in the Seattle system. It's just going to be Gus Bradley. It's like they haven't run the Seattle system since 2018. Yeah, they have a four-man front now, but they've been diversifying their coverages ever since 2019. That was a big point of emphasis even over a half decade ago for the 49ers. So you can imagine that in 2026, San Francisco would be looking to further diversify its coverages. They weren't going to stay stuck in quicksand, stuck in mud of the Seattle system that they hadn't really run in over 5 years. And that is where you enter Raheem Morris, somebody who, this was fascinating the other day. I didn't realize this. I knew that Morris was on Tampa's staff when John Lynch was a player. I didn't realize he was specifically in the DB room with Mike Tomlin and John Lynch. Mike Tomlin, the ex-Pittsburgh Steelers coach, was the defensive backs coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2002 and 2003. And Mike Tomlin had an assistant. His name was Raheem Morris. So it was Tomlin and Morris coaching in the room. The player was John Lynch. He was the future Hall of Fame safety in there. So Raheem Morris has his base of NFL coaching experience in the DB room itself, which is why I made the video yesterday. We talked about a potential Renardo Green trade, since that happens to be all the rage and all these rumors. And we talked about the corner position. And I think I've got to always circle back now to Upton Stout being a potential foundational pillar for the 49ers in the back end because of his blitzing adaptability. The fact that he led the league last year in pressures coming from the cornerback position. Now you pair him with a defensive coordinator whose team was number 2 in the NFL in blitz rate. That's Raheem Morris, with Ulbrich last year being his defensive coordinator. And Ulbrich came from the Jets, and Ulbrich coached Jermaine Johnson. So I guess it's a small world. It all ties together. The 49ers are definitely going to be bringing some new ideas to the back end, some new alignments to the front, some 3-4 stuff, potentially some 5-1 penny front stuff coming out of the 3-4. It's going to be very, very intriguing. And I think that today's conversation, obviously spurred by the fact that Robert Saleh, who is the 49ers' departed defensive coordinator, has moved to Tennessee, where he is building a defense in his own vision with a player whom the 49ers targeted at the trade deadline this past year, but the New York Jets wanted that second-round pick instead of a third, and probably a good thing at this point that the 49ers did not pull the trigger there, because A, it would not have changed their fate in 2025, and B, they'd be sitting on a $13 million contract. They'd probably have to trade Jermaine Johnson, to be honest, this offseason, and maybe they could have gotten a player like T'Vondre Sweat. But history would have been different had the 49ers had Jermaine Johnson, but obviously that's a path that they didn't choose to take, and I think that they're happy that they have their second-round pick heading into this draft, where they're going to get a good player. If they pick right, that's always the key, right? That's the lifeblood of a team, but you're going to have a good player under contract for 4 seasons. All right, we're going to open this up for questions. I just got back from the NFL Combine. I got to reach over here and get my phone really quickly. Give me 1 second, because this is how I monitor some of the stuff coming through. The Colts have given Anthony Richardson permission to seek a trade given his uncertain future in Indy, assuming that there's a Daniel Jones re-sign in Indy and Anthony Richardson is going to be allowed to seek a trade, although we haven't seen all too much consistent football on tape yet from Anthony Richardson. I guess anybody is a 49ers QB rehab program candidate, but I don't think Anthony Richardson. The lot probably in common with Trey Lance there. He's obviously very raw quarterback prospect coming out of Florida, has wowed with some deep throws and has moved around a little bit, but I don't think has shown a consistent ability to play on time yet, which is the key to prolonged success at the NFL level. So Richardson might be heading elsewhere, probably will be heading elsewhere, as he has permission to seek a trade from the Colts. All right, a good 500 of you in here. I like the crowd. I am ready to answer some questions. The Raiders want a Micah Parsons type trade offer. Yeah, they might want that. I don't think they're going to get that for Max Crosby. I think it's as simple as Parsons had been in his statistical prime in several seasons entering last one when he was traded for the 2-1s and an impact player. We haven't seen the statistical prime of Max Crosby since 2022. And sure, you can argue that maybe being in a better situation will help him a lot. And I think that if the 49ers are able to acquire him, that will definitely be one of the hopes that they're banking on, that pairing him with Nick Bosa can maybe bring out his best statistical years. But at some point, production does matter when it comes to trade value. It can't all be a projection. There actually has to be tangible evidence that this guy can produce at a certain level. And the reason that Parsons went for so damn much, even though he needed a new contract, was because the production was there, right? It was sitting out there in front of you. A team here would take on Max Crosby's contract and probably have to renegotiate it at some point, especially if he played well. But I just don't see that the production can justify a cost that equals what Micah Parsons went to the Green Bay Packers for. I think it's as simple as that. Now, the Raiders can set this initial price as high as they want, but if they don't come off of that price, I wouldn't be shocked if a trade doesn't happen. And, maybe it's that price or bust for the Raiders. Could be a smart strategy for them. I mean, Max Crosby's a good player. They could say King's ransom or nothing, kind of like the 49ers in the 2022 offseason, where they said, we're going to figure out a contract with Deebo Samuel. If you come with a King's ransom, we'll think about trading him. But if you don't come with a King's ransom, then we're not going to consider it. That was the 49ers attitude. I thought that it was a smart one. I thought that, especially for a team that was ready-made to go run at a Super Bowl, I just don't think that the Raiders are ready-made to go run at a Super Bowl. So I think that they should have a little bit more bend in their asking price for Max Crosby. Getting Max brings more than just talent. He brings his attitude. Yes, I think Max is the first one out there, the last one to leave from the practice field every day. He's in the building early. He's an absolute technician. He's an absolute grinder. I know when the 49ers and the Raiders have had their joint practices, the 49ers have taken notes, basically. Like, you watch how Max Crosby operates, and I think that's a guy that you would love to have in your building. Is Dre Greenlaw a potential candidate for return if he is cut by the Broncos? I would say yes, but I would also caution people to watch what Raheem Morris is doing. And this is tricky because Raheem has run a bunch of different stuff in his life as a defensive coordinator. So it's not like Robert Saleh, where we know if Robert Saleh joins your team, they're going to target a player like Jermaine Johnson. It's just going to happen. I think with Raheem Morris, it's not as obvious because we've got to figure out exactly how he's going to approach building the 49ers defense and encouraging the 49ers front office to bring him some raw materials. He's run several different approaches in the past. It's not just been that 4-3 that Robert Saleh has run with the 49ers and with the New York Jets. So if it is, if he moves more to 3-4, if he's de-emphasizing the stack linebacker position, then a reunion with Dre Greenlaw becomes less likely. Now, anything is possible at a bargain price, right? But we're talking about which players would the 49ers be willing to overextend themselves for. That's the key difference here, right? And I think that in the case of Dre Greenlaw, maybe he's at this point of his career where there are not going to be overextending offers for him because there have been those availability issues. He is getting older. He was drafted way back in 2019. It's amazing how quickly time flies. So Greenlaw, right around that 30-year-old mark. And if that's the case, then maybe the 49ers are able to reunite with an old friend, but it's got to fit with what Raheem Morris has envisioned for this defense. Alex says that it's a no-brainer to get Max Crosby. He'll be productive for 4 more years. That's true, but you've got to convince the Raiders to pull the trigger on a trade. If they don't want to trade him for less than an exorbitant amount of draft capital that would hurt you if you're the 49ers, then you can't make that move. Given Nick Bosa's injury history and production not reaching his defensive player of the year level, should the 49ers test trade waters for me? Nick Bosa's been at an extremely high level when he's been available. This whole defensive player of the year, he's played at that level. I don't think that there has been a dip, but the issue is the help that the 49ers need to get for Nick Bosa. His defensive player of the year season, 2022, they had some help up front. They traded for Charles Omenihu in 21. So they had Omenihu aboard. They had Samson Ebukam on the team. They obviously had some defensive tackle issues in 22 that they went ahead and they tried to address with the Javon Hargrave trade for 2023. But Bosa's been playing at a high level throughout. I understand that he tore his ACL this past year, but when he's been in there, he has absolutely been a force multiplying difference maker. And why you would want to get rid of a force multiplying difference maker doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, just rewind to week 1. Seattle Seahawks are moving down the field. They're inside the 49ers 10. I just rewatched this yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. It looks like the Seahawks are going to be able to steal a win from the 49ers after Brock Purdy drove San Francisco downfield and threw it to Jake Tonjes for the go-ahead touchdown. Guess who tilts that game back to the 49ers for good? It's Nick Bosa, and he doesn't even have to touch the quarterback to do it. He pushes Abe Lucas, the right tackle, backwards with a power move into Sam Darnold's lap. That causes Darnold to fumble. 49ers pick it up. They beat the Seahawks. If Bosa's not in on that play, 49ers probably lose that game because there's an open receiver that Darnold is going to on the near side, and it's probably another 5 to 8 yard gain. It's probably 1st and goal for the Seahawks, and they probably score a touchdown, especially if Bosa's not around for the 49ers. So the 49ers, here's the thing. The Seahawks deserve their flowers. It's one of the great teams in NFL history. They won a Super Bowl. They went through the playoffs in dominant fashion, and they hoisted the Lombardi Trophy with one of the great defenses ever analytically, one of the great special teams units ever analytically, one of the great playoff offenses. They didn't turn the ball over a single time in the playoffs. They won a Super Bowl coming out of the best division in NFL history. The NFC West this year was the best division we've ever seen. The Seahawks deserve a ton of flowers. Any 49ers fan who says they took an easy path and didn't deserve it is just salty right now. But the 49ers beat that historically good Seattle Seahawks team on the road in week 1, which underscores how good the NFC West was and underscores how damn good the 49ers were when they actually had health on the football team. And who sealed the win for the 49ers? Nick Bosa. So get out of here with this ridiculous talk about testing trade waters for Nick Bosa. He's a force multiplying player, one of the best in the league. What the 49ers need to do is pair Bosa with the appropriate talent and the appropriate scheme. And that's why Raheem Morris is here to figure out a way to allow this defense to roar moving forward. But you should not be in the business of jettisoning A-list pillars of your football team. And for those of you who are new to the A-list pillar discussion, I could illustrate it right here. This is a look at the 49ers roster. Every single player highlighted in yellow is an A-list pillar for the 49ers. The goal is to have one of these guys at every single position. It's like the foundational structure of your football team. And the 49ers have one at every position right now except for wide receiver. I think they wouldn't mind having 2 along the offensive line, interior line and exterior line. So, yeah, look out for Tyler Linderbaum, although it's probably a long shot. But I don't think the 49ers would mind having an elite center, and I don't think they would mind having a defensive tackle or another defensive end that classifies as an A-list pillar. I think the more the merrier at those positions. But Bosa is obviously one of those. It's Bosa, Warner, and Lenore. These are guys that you build your team around. Trent Williams, you build your team around him as long as you can. That's why they're trying to figure out a contract here, essentially for the end of his career, up through age 40, I would think. George Kittle, you build your team around him. He's going to be coming back off that Achilles, still a force multiplying player. They wanted to build their team around Brandon Ayuk. It didn't work out at the receiver position. Christian McCaffrey, obviously a foundation. Brock Purdy, obviously the foundational pillar for the 49ers. It's you don't touch those guys, right? Those are the guys that keep this whole structure together, and you build a robust roster around them. You say that Lynch isn't interested in fixing the offensive line. The offensive line isn't broken for the 49ers. It's a middle of the pack offensive line. There is this notion amongst casual fans that the 49ers offensive line is terrible. It's not. It ranked probably, number 14, I think, in pass block win rate this year. It's been slightly above average in the pass blocking metrics over the past 2 seasons. There was, I think, a big push and need for the 49ers to get better in pass protection following 2023. They have. I think that they would want to take one more stride if possible along the very interior. I think they're interested in signing a left guard. I've talked about Dylan Parham. I've talked about Isaac Seumalo. There's been that one spot last year that was especially problematic at left guard. Center, Brendel's been playing at about an average level for the 49ers. I thought that he was below average in 2024 when he was dealing with a knee tendonitis, but other than that has been about at a good replacement level for San Francisco. If they can take a swing that fits within their structure to get a Tyler Linderbaum, of course that would elevate the offense to another level, but this isn't a video game, and there has to be a realistic boundary set parameter-wise when we're discussing the 49ers. They've improved a lot at right tackle. Colton McKivitz is now definitely an upper half player there. Dominic Pooney needs to be healthy next year. I think that the knee injury really hurt him, but he's their right guard. Brendel, it's a wash at center. If they can improve there, I think they need a long-term plan there too, because Jake Brendel is nearing his mid-30s. They definitely need a step up at left guard. That was the big problem position, and obviously Trent Williams is a future Hall of Famer, and he's one of the best in the game at left tackle. And we could start talking about how the 49ers think they're going to pass the torch at that position, because that obviously will not last forever. But the idea that the 49ers need to fix the offensive line is just rooted in this falsity that the offensive line is somehow irreparably broken. It is about a league average offensive line. They've got the best quarterback in terms of avoiding sacks in the entire league in Brock Purdy. He's literally the best in avoiding sacks. Every single piece of data points to that. They need, more than anything, more separation downfield so that they can get rid of the ball more quickly. And they also, I think, based on what I was just talking about up front and the need to improve one of the guard positions, I think they need to be better running up the middle. And I think that hopefully the 49ers can address some of that with how they attack left guard and how Dominic Pooney's health improves from 2025 to 2026. Because if you can become stronger with some of those interior runs, I think you set yourself up more for the outside zone and whatever you're running to the perimeter, which obviously is going to be very dependent on blocking that comes from receivers and tight ends. And that also has to get a lot better. That's another reason why the offensive line gets incorrect evaluations from casual fans, is because they're not factoring in the 49ers drop off in terms of blocking from the perimeter receivers and the impact of George Kittle's absence last year. When Kittle was available, the 49ers had a top 10 run game last season. When Kittle was on IR, they were number 26. I think that's a very, very large gap, very large delta between the two, but it does show you how important it is that the 49ers correctly address the skill position question this offseason. I think that actually leads the way when it comes to what the 49ers need to do with their offensive personnel. I am waiting for some good questions. Newsflash, you guys are not offensive line experts. You guys don't know as much as John Lynch or anybody really in the 49ers building when it comes to building a team. So you can drop some of the arrogance. The worst is arrogance in a comment section from people without a profile picture. It's like, okay, you're going to hide behind anonymity and think that you're an offensive line expert when you're really just sitting in a basement or bored at work at a job that you hate. You'd rather be building a football team, but you think that you know more than the people who have actually been building football teams and playing football and doing all that stuff. That's like the peak of arrogance. And it's like you can suggest things and you can be a fan and you can talk in a way that doesn't broadcast that you think that you know more than professionals. Just admit that you're a fan and you're frustrated with a certain outcome, but don't start acting like you're an expert that knows better than people who actually have experience and have done this for a living. It seems like everybody, now that they have a voice because they can type something into YouTube, everybody thinks that they're an expert. And I'm sorry, you're not. And they're not going to listen to you, and they shouldn't, because if they did, they would just run the team into the ground. They won 13 games last year despite a mass injury event. Shows you that the roster was very, very strong. Yes, the chat room is hilarious. Go watch the Fantasyland channels. This is real football discussion here. That's why more people watch this one than anywhere else. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. We will talk to you very, very soon.